Hey everyone, how's things going? Today I'll be playing Cerebral Imaging, and I believe this is the first time I'm featuring this ID on my site on a video, on one of my videos. We shall see. I'm playing up against Valencia, and this Cerebral Imaging deck is not a typical Power Shutdown combo deck, it's not a Sea Scorch deck, it's a Media Blitz deck. So most of this game I'll just be talking about the theory behind Media Blitz and what you can combo with it. Now, Media Blitz works with a limited number of agendas. There are not that many agendas that work, and most of them are very marginal. The thing with and obviously in this deck, I'm going to use it to replicate mandatory upgrades. The ideal situation is I machine a mandatory upgrade somewhere in the early to mid game. If they run it, they steal it, I get to Media Blitz the mandatory upgrades, and I have 4 clicks to my turn. If they don't steal it, I score it, and I get 4 clicks on my turn, and I don't even need to use Media Blitz. It's a win-win situation for me, and it allows me to fast advance all my agendas from there on out. With 3-2 agendas in faction, can't ask for anything more. And I think it plays well in Cerebral Imaging because it allows you. Cerebral Imaging has very good burst draw and econ, which allows you to set up your combo much quicker and find the all important copies of Media Blitz and mandatory upgrades. HB Engineering the Future is a bit too slow for my taste for this sort of deck. Now if you look at the list of agendas that Media Blitz combo with, you notice that most of the good ones are 3-pointers, such as the Fragments, government contracts, restructured data pool, all these 3-pointers, and that is the inherent problem. If you are comboing with a 3-pointer agenda, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because if your strategy hinges on the runner stealing a 3-point agenda, i.e. hinges on the runner getting halfway to victory, I think you're in a pretty bad spot. So yeah, I wouldn't rely on any strategy that relies on the runner getting 3 agenda points worth of agendas. That sounds like a surefire way to lose. I mean, in that case, Media Blitz will be a lose-less card, but I don't think that's the way to go, unless you're playing Mushin, I guess, where if they run, they win. If you lose less. If they don't run, you win more. I guess that works. But anyway, back to here, we see that I'm motioning out the mandatory upgrades and he doesn't run, so I'm going to score it. Pretty easy for me, and now I can threaten fast advance for the rest of the game, which is pretty scary. Unfortunately, I started with no money cards. I kept my opening hand because there were 2 pieces of ice and one agenda. The one agenda being the mandatory upgrades, which I don't really care about the runner stealing or scoring. I do not want the runner to touch my 2-pointers. Mandatory upgrades is fine. The other 6 2-pointers, 3-2 agendas, nope, stay away. So here I have IQ on HQ and Victor on R&D, Victor 2. I do not rest the Victor 2 here for obvious reasons. I do not want to go down to 0 credits. Unfortunately, because of that, he finds 2 agendas right off the top of R&D. So this is very, very painful. That definitely shouldn't have happened, and as a result, I'm in a lot of trouble. And had he ran again on R&D, he would have seen the Kronos project. Yeah, that is very disgusting. Anyway, I do find myself a green level clearance, so that's pretty good. And with my final click, I'm going to archive memories for the green level clearance because I really have no money cards. This is pretty bad. By this point, I should have seen at least 2 econ cards, including the bigger ones like blue level clearance, restructure, hedge fund. Without those, I'm very much stuck because I cannot draw more cards without exceeding my max hand size, and I cannot get enough money to res my central ice, which is kind of a big deal. It's made worse by the fact that the HQ ice is IQ. With IQ, you actually want to res it early, when you still have less than 5 cards in hand. As you accumulate cards with the clearances, now I have 6 cards in hand, IQ will cost 6 to res. That is a hefty price to pay for a code gate that only ends the run. Yeah. IQ is amazing in Cerebral Imaging if you can res 1 early. That will allow you to basically grow it to disproportionate strengths later on. But if you find it late, it's pretty useless, because if you have 10 or more cards in hand, you certainly don't want to be resing an IQ. So it's meant as an early res ice that is very, very relevant late game. It's not so good against Anarchs because they have David and it only has 1 subroutine, so that's the biggest weakness. And unfortunately, as I draw into more agendas, I'm getting into a really horrible position right now, where I am flooded with agendas in hand, but I cannot afford to rest the IQ that's protecting my hand. And my opponent, seemingly knowing this, immediately attacks HQ. I can't res it. I cannot afford to spend 7 credits to protect my hand, so I have to let him in every single run. So he steals a Chronos project, and he steals a Chronos project. Now, the silver lining here is that as he steals these 1 pointers, he gets to match point, he doesn't win, but he reduces the number of cards in my hand, making it easier for me to res the IQ on HQ. Had he ran again on HQ, I would have res the IQ at that point for 5 credits. That would have been worth it. HQ is by far the weaker server for cerebral imaging. You want to defend HQ to avoid getting because your agendas are all in HQ, and most importantly, you don't want to get siphoned or vamped. So that is why IQ goes on HQ, because it's the thickest ice that my deck can boast, and it's not porous unlike the Bioroids. Unfortunately, I can't seem to get IQ res at an opportune time. Now this is a pretty good time to res IQ, when you have a lot of credits, 11 credits, and you have few cards in hand, 5 cards. So you can res IQ without losing too much tempo, and without having to worry about discarding cards at the end of your turn. Unfortunately, he doesn't run into my hand, so IQ will have to wait for another day. In the meantime, I'll score an agenda to place the pressure on the runner. The Parasite on Victor is going to take down very slowly, and I do have a Cyberdex Virus Suite to take care of that. It goes up to 2, so now Victor's at 3 strength. In the meantime, he continues setting up, and it is at this point that the 4 clicks each turn looks very nice on paper, but without the money to fast advance the agendas in my hand, it's going to take quite a while for me to win. Now here he runs into my Victor, and I res the Cyberdex Virus Suite to keep him out of my R&D. He's on the match point. Pretty obviously I need to keep him out. But this is a big mistake. I spent 3 credits to keep him out of 1 access. What I should have done was to let him through my R&D, give him 1 free access, but stop him for the rest of the turn, and for the next 2 turns for that matter, because he would access the Cyberdex Virus Suite, which will automatically purge virus counters. I should have risked that 1 access, because 1 access is preferable to losing 3 credits. Look at me now, I only have 4 credits after resing the IQ on HQ, which meant that on my turn I click for 4 credits and I'm forced to discard 2 cards. This lowers agenda density in HQ, and this also makes it much harder for me to score the Vitruvius that's already in my hand. So this is a huge mistake. Resing the Cyberdex Virus Suite killed my game. Well, I'm very unfamiliar with cerebral imaging and this deck in particular, so mistakes are expected to be made. He does run my hand, IQ being of 4 strength. This is another weakness. When you're so low on credits, you cannot afford to keep cards in hand. It means that IQ becomes much more porous. Net Ready Eyes plus the End Breaker Suite is going to be a pain in the butt for me. It renders a lot of my eyes blank, particularly the code gates, but also even Ichi and Eli aren't going to be very useful. They do tax quite a bit for 2 or 3 credits each, but they're so expensive to res at this point that I simply can't afford to install them on R&D. So here I finally see the first semblance of an econ card. Hedge Fund. I draw again and I see another agenda. I'm going to be prepared to score 1 next turn. I'll click for a credit so that I can safely score 1 next turn. And this is, I purposely bring myself to 5 cards in hand, so that he cannot york Net Ready Eyes into HQ so easily. So as long as I can defend HQ, I should be good, unless he finds an agenda off the top of R&D, in which case that's just bad luck. I mean, he has been getting a number of accesses, but I think he has been seeing more agendas than average. Especially with the 2 Chronos project hits on HQ. He definitely has been sniping more than his fair share of agendas, which is unlucky. But that is to be expected with such a high agenda density. I really don't want to be running 11 agendas in this deck, but I am. Because I need 6 3-2 agendas, 3 mandatory upgrades. And this poses a problem for Media Blitz, because Media Blitz is a current that disappears when an agenda is stolen. So yes, you really don't want to be running a high agenda density, but I'm forced to right here. Unless I cut down on the number of 3-2 agendas, which I might consider following this game. I install Ichi on R&D. Hopefully I can force the Mimic out. because that's the one breaker he's missing. And even if the Mimic comes out, he cannot net ready eyes it on the same run. We'll see what happens here. He blackmails my R&D, so I cannot rest the Ichi. He gets one free access, and that wins him the game. How unlucky. That being said, my poor luck could have been mitigated by good play, which definitely wasn't the case this game. I kept an opening hand that was rubbish. There was no cash, and as such I was not able to do a lot of things, including fast advancing my agendas and protecting my centrals. This game's all about defending your centrals anyway. If you let them get into R&D, you're locking yourself out of agendas. If you don't block HQ, you're just going to get your agenda stolen anyway. And I felt that was a huge problem this game. Also, clicking to draw cards is much more preferable to clicking for credits in this sort of deck where there are lots of econ and draw events. I was clicking for credits for the majority of this game because I could not afford to click for cards because that would put me over the hand limit. Another important reason to have cash in Cerebral Imaging. Now let's talk a bit about the ice, which was also another major problem this game. Victor 2.0 on R&D was underwhelming at best. It was a 5-cost end run that ended up being blanked by Yogg plus Net Ready Ice plus Parasite pretty quickly. I could never afford to pump the first trace either, so I never really got to punish him for his insolence in running on his final clicks. If that were an Ichi 1.0 instead, the game would have been way different. What about IQ? IQ is a very strong piece of ice in CI when rest early, but I found it a huge challenge to maximize the value I got from IQ. This goes back to the problem of not having enough money once again. I felt that's the underlying problem that caused me a lot of problems when trying to make IQ effective. Because I was on so few credits most of the time and I was flooded with cards, I could never find a good window to rest IQ. Then again, maybe I should have ditched IQ in this particular game because I was never going to get very good mileage out of it, and David would just completely own it anyways. The IQ never really did anything this game. By the time it was res, it was way too late, and before that, the runner was just running rampant all over HQ and stole 2 agendas because it wasn't a cheaper piece of ice, like an Eli. So, lots of unfortunate aspects about my gameplay that caused me to lose. Can't blame it on luck. Was definitely due to inexperience on my part with playing Cerebral Imaging. Well, at least I learned, and hopefully you learned something from it too. So thanks for watching Happy Net Running. See you around.